a question can come in this kind of works in the field, how to identify the correct section of tectonic transport. Suppose this is a cuboid of rock and we are observing this thing on this surface. There is no guarantee that the tectonic extension has happened in this way. It can also be possible that the tectonic extension acted in that way. How to know the true direction? The moment we understand the true direction, then we need to have a section perpendicular to the tectonic transport direction. For that, we look at these blocks which we can call as Boudin. There are several geometries of Boudins possible, and here we are dealing with rectangular Boudins. Look at what is outside these rectangular pieces. The foliation outside these rectangular pieces will be sucked inside, because the vacant space is not permitted in the nature. The rocks which are outside tend to come inside. The intensity of these folds actually die out, which means that here we will get straight foliation planes. These folds are known as neck fold or scar fold, also known as passive fold, because rocks get passively folded. Here folding is not the main mechanism. Tectonic extension is the main thing and folding is the outcome. Therefore, passively these foldings take place. These folds are known as neck folds or scar folds or passive folds. Be very aware that passive fold has another meaning. When we say the genesis of the fold in terms of buckling, bending, then the third possibility is called passive fold, and here the meaning of passive fold can be quite different from the meaning that we are doing here. Be careful, the word passive fold can have two meanings in structural geology, just like the term detachment has two meanings in structural geology. When you see such folds in the field, find out the hinge line of such folds. The hinge line will be in the third dimension. That means the white screen what you are watching, perpendicular to that the hinge line will lie. In the field, one can put finger over here and one can sense the hinge line. Then once the hinge line is obtained, find out its trend. Once you found the trend, we need to look at this in a section which is perpendicular to the hinge line. This trend can be obtained using clinometer or a Brunton. Then you can calculate and find out what should be the orientation of the plane which is perpendicular to the hinge line. That means that this hinge line is to be the pole of the true rock section that we need to study. Let me write down. Hinge line of passive folds is the pole of the true rock section on which Li are to be measured. In a more simple language, suppose the trend of the hinge line is 30 degree north. That means I need if the trend of the hinge line is 30 degree north, perpendicular to that should be the strike of the true section, and that is to be 120 degree north. Therefore, in this diagram, in this block, say this is the orientation of the hinge lines. Then we have to find out perpendicular to these hinge lines, which is a red arrow here. This is the true tectonic direction of transport and also the extension axis. So now we need a section which is parallel to this arrow, which is this particular section to study. This section is to be searched in the field to measure the Li lengths. So in this situation, if these blue lines are the hinge lines, which in 3D can go like this, then do not look for this section. Find a direction which is perpendicular to this and a plane which passes through this particular plane. On this plane, I have to measure the rectangular Boudin. The example that I gave you right now of the rectangular Boudins, from here, which is the final stage, the initial stage can be worked out. The line length conservation was followed. Interestingly, this is also the case when the area conservation also has been followed. Say this length and this length is B, which is maintained over here. This length is L1, this length is L2, this length is L3, and this length is sum of L1, L2 and L3. In this case, the total area of the three rectangles is given by B multiplied by L1 plus L2 plus L3, and in this case also the area is given by B multiplied by L1 plus L2 plus L3. So, this is a good example where both line length balance and area balance have been made. What I talked in terms of the Boudin, one can find out same approach with the belemnites fossil, which is a cigar shaped fossil which can get Boudinaged into pieces, and then it can be restored, and then the strain parameters can be obtained. In my most of the diagrams, the ideal situation has been explained. In reality, some variation can be obtained. Even with the rectangular Boudins, we may find a situation where some of the Boudins are a bit rotated. This is the reality, like this Boudin is a rotated one. Sometimes this B length is not maintained the same, that is another possibility. Third, between two rectangular Boudins, some other geometry can be found. Fourth, the boundaries can be little bit corroded and small pieces can be found. So, these are the realistic cases. One has to be aware of the problems of line length balancing as well. This is a case where noticeable change in bed thickness can happen in my calculation if a small change in bed length takes place. What is that? Consider the rectangle ABZX in this diagram. Say this is a rectangular Boudin on which you are going to work, and as I have explained in detail, you try to restore from the several Boudinage rectangular blocks. Now, while tracing the Boudin, the other geologist has taken, instead of AB, the AC length. It is a very small difference. One can find this angle is very low, and the AB length is nearly equal to the AC length. When AB is nearly equal to AC, it is not a problem so far this length is concerned, but there can be a significant difference between AX length and the ZC length, the AX length and the ZC length. This can create a trouble in cross section balancing. This is a realistic situation. How we are tracking the Boudin rectangular geometry also matters. I re-explain. Suppose these are the little bit irregular geometry of Boudin that we find. Now, one can draw the rectangle in this way, and another person can decide the rectangle in a slightly different way. So long the Boudin size is small, there is no problem, but if it is a giant one, say few meter, in that case there can be problems coming in. Line length balance can be done, but then the area balance will be problematic, because as we see AX and ZC can be significantly different. So, it may be a good idea when a cross section balancing is done or when a strain analysis is done, the geologist can declare how much is the possible error or what about the precision. Such statements can actually strengthen the work. Let us look at why the line length balance may be difficult to apply in metamorphic terrain. I have chosen this figure and I will explain it in detail. Consider there is a rectangular block with length L0 and the thickness T, so that the starting area is L0 multiplied by T. Two possible deformations have been explained. Suppose the deformation has happened at low temperature condition, that means at shallow crustal level. There faulting is more promoted, therefore, the entire L0 length suppose is broken into 3 pieces of L0 by 3 length each. the entire block is looked as combination of 3 blocks of B, C and D. Suppose faulting has brought unit E above D and over D and E unit B has gone, reverse faulting is demonstrated. In this case, area has been conserved. This T length is added up 3 times, so it is 3T and L0 by 3 is this particular length. So, the total area is given by L0 by 3 multiplied by 3T, which is L0 multiplied by T, which is same as the starting area. So, in this way, in case of a low temperature deformation, which has been described here as a low temperature cooker, area remains preserved. In low temperature deformation, in other words, by brittle faulting, area remains preserved. But this is not the case in case of high temperature deformation, what has been called here as high temperature cooker. High temperature is attained at a greater depth, where ductile deformation takes place, the rock does not break into pieces, brittle faulting is not permitted, rather the layers can get folded. Here this total length we do not know what will happen, and the total thickness also we do not know. The area L multiplied by T dash, whether it is same as L0 multiplied by T remains a question. The reason is, when this deformation has happened, there can be influx of rock material. Not only that, there can also be subtraction of rock material can go out also. Therefore, this relation is uncertain. Since this is uncertain, and also the relation between L0 and L is uncertain, the relation between T and T dash is also uncertain. Therefore, line length balance is difficult to apply in such high temperature cooker where folding or ductile deformation happens, ductile shearing can happen. Usually in such places metamorphism happens, and that is why it is said that line length balance is difficult to apply in the metamorphic terrains. Students need to understand that the diagram here is at best called as a model. No faulting will lead to probably from this situation to that situation. It is just for the sake of representation. So, do not try to see exactly this kind of deformation pattern in the field in the context of line length balancing. Different terms are used: pin length and bed length. Start looking from here, say this is the cross section to be balanced. So, our aim is to come to this phase of undeformed horizontal layers. Consider that the folded layer has an orthogonal thickness of T and the curved length of this layer is L0. This L0 is known as the bed length, and the distance between the pin from here to here is known as the pin length, capital L. When this layer is unfolded in the process of cross section balancing, we can find, of course, L is less than L0 length. In other words, you can keep on drawing several short straight line segments and measure them and add up to get the total L0 length. There is a famous rule, Dahlstrom's rule, which says that a discontinuity can be identified where dipping beds overlying a flat horizon. Say in this case, this is the flat horizon and we can find dipping beds here. Say local observation is made, we still do not know the folded layer. So, once we see that there are horizontal layer and there are dipping beds, we understand that we are dealing with a discontinuity. Note that we are not calling it as an unconformity, we are simply calling it as a discontinuity. In case of unconformity, say this is an unconformity, then the rocks deposited here and the rocks here are of different ages. We are not calling across this discontinuity there can be difference in ages of the rocks, but then the discontinuity can be produced due to tectonic reason, such as this can be a detachment and over the detachment deformation has been restricted. In this particular case, the orthogonal thickness is maintained constant during the process of cross-section balancing. While picking up thrust faults from seismic data, find out contacts between steep bed and horizontal bed. So, this is a horizontal layer and then there are steeply dipping layer. Then this contact can be a thrust fault. Note that it can be, it need not be always. So, exceptions exist. This is more going towards a seismic image interpretation.